Hello and welcome back. My name is Dr. Christopher Gennari. This is the Great Big History Podcast. And today, we do the Persian Wars. We start our section on war and events from 500 BC to 300 BC. And we start with the Persian Wars because they are the wars that define the Golden Age of Greece. That is where the Persian Empire, the largest empire up to that point in the history of the world, which had a quarter of the Earth's population in it, fought a bunch of hillbillies in the mountains of Greece, and the Greeks won. And not only all the Greeks, just 13 states. Most Greeks were on the Persian side. So how did this happen? And if you had that question, how did this happen? That's great, because that is the first question of history. That is Herodotus's question. How did the Greeks win? And his book, the Histories of the Persian Wars, will take 900 pages to prove. And his answer essentially is because the Greeks are free and the Persians are not. Now notice, it's not a list of stuff that happened. It's not this happens and this happens. No, it is a theory and then an attempt to prove that theory. It is the Greeks are free and the Persians are not. So he has to prove that 1, the Greeks are free, 2, the Persians are not free, 3, that freedom matters on the battlefield, 4, that it mattered on the Persian Wars battlefield. And so he's got to go into all of this different stuff about how these people lived, how they acted, what they thought, what their government was like, how their armies worked. And even the Persian Wars start earlier. In 700 BC or so, Lydia, a kingdom that came out of the Assyrian Empire, conquered Ionia. Now, Ionia is a little thin strip of land between the Aegean Sea and the mountains on the coast of what is today Turkey, of Asia Minor. It's the westernmost part of Asia Minor. Because what Asia Minor is a giant plateau. It's like Central Asia, big flats like Wyoming, surrounded by mountains. And on the other side of those mountains is basically California. It's a Mediterranean climate that goes like almost, it's a little flat land and then boom into these mountains. And Greeks have been living in Ionia, Ionia, forever, since before Homer. And the Lydians liked the Greeks. They're what's called Philhellene, Philhellene, Philhellene. They like the Greeks. They like Greek culture. They think it's pretty cool. So the Greeks are important in the Lydian kingdom. They play an important part. The Lydians like them. So they give money to the gods. They let people have freedom. They let them live in their little cities. They incorporate people into the government. In 547, Cyrus shows up. Actually, he doesn't show up. In 547, there's the Battle of Pteria, Pteria, and I'm probably saying that wrong. But it's where the Lydians, the king Croesus, Croesus, decided, I'm going to attack this guy Cyrus. This guy Cyrus has beaten up on the Medians. He is on my border. I'm going to fight him, and I'm going to conquer him. And this is a very famous scene because he goes to the Greek oracle at Delphi. And he asks that question. Greek Oracle of Delphi, here's lots of money. What will happen if I attack Cyrus? And the answer is, you will destroy a great empire. And he says, great. And he walks out and says, get my army, get my horses, get my stuff. He completely forgot what was written on the door when he walked in, which is, know thyself. Croesus didn't know himself. He wanted to be a conquering hero, and so here was the oracle saying you could be a conquering hero. So he gets his army together, he crosses the Halys River in the middle of Asia Minor, and attacks Cyrus. This battle happens in 547, and Cyrus wins. Cyrus conquers Lydia, and with it he gets a 2-for-1 special. Conquer the Lydians, you get the Greeks. He didn't even show up to conquer the Greeks. He sent some general, and that guy showed up and said, you now are owned by the Persians. And they were like, okay. Like, remember how cool it was to be conquered by Cyrus? They didn't even get Cyrus to show up. They got some flunky who's like, you're now owned by Cyrus. And they're like, okay, what are we going to do? So what does that mean? It means that the Ionians are not respected in this empire. They're the loser of a loser. So who's going to get respected? Well, the Persians, first of all, they're the winners. The Medes, who are their cousins, right? They're going to marry into the Medes. So they're number 2. There's Babylon. So if you're Babylonian, you're going to get respected because Babylon is the richest city on earth. Then there's Egypt. Now, the relationship with Egypt is going to be funky, but there's there's the respect that goes with Egypt is the oldest civilization on earth, and it is the richest kind of country on earth. Like, there is like, I don't like you, but props, respect. I got to give it to you. The Greeks come in like they're younger than the Hebrews. And the Hebrews will work with Cyrus. Remember, he's a Messiah. So the Hebrews are all in on working with the Persians. So the Greeks are like nobodies. They're hillbillies on the edge of the world, 2,000 miles away from Persia. Like, who cares about them? And so they felt disrespected. And they felt disrespected. And they felt disrespected. They weren't going to get the best jobs. They weren't going to get involved in the government. They had no way to climb bigger than their small little end of the world place. And so in 500 BC, the Ionian cities revolted. And they knew that if the Persian king showed up with his army, they would lose. They needed help. So they went to their cousins, the Greeks, across the Aegean Sea in Greece. And who do you go to if you need help? Well, the first people you go to are the Spartans. And you go to the Spartans and you say, Spartans, we're in a war with Persia. It's perfect for you. You love to fight. Come and fight and help us win our freedom. And the Persians look at them and go, are you insane? Do you know how big the Persian army is? And they're like, yeah, that's why we need your help. It's like, no, you're going to lose. You're going to lose badly. Go away. And they're like, oh, okay, that sucks. And they go to other people, and they're all say the same thing. Are you insane? What you're talking about is insanity. You should have come to us before you revolted. We would have told you how crazy that is. So they go to the Athenians. And they're like, Athenians, you have a democracy. Can we talk to your democracy? And they say, of course you could talk to our democracy. Of course, it's a democracy. Come, talk to the 4,000 people. We will vote. We will have a vote. And the first thing that they say is, look, we're cousins, right? Back in the day, we all lived in Attica. Like, we speak the same version of Greek, kinda. You know, it's kind of like British and Canadians. Like, we're close. We're a little different, and we're separated by an ocean, but we're cool. We're really the same at heart. And they talk about the oppression, and they're like, and they bring out a map, and look at the Persian Empire. If you help us fight, you can own all of this. And the Athenians say, we can own all of that. We'd be rich. And the Ionians go, will you help us? And they say, yes, we will help you. Woo! And the Ionians are like, their minds are blown. Because when they went to Sparta, they talked to one or two guys to try to get them to like sell it to everybody else. And what they realized is what Herodotus tells us, that it is far easier to get a group of people to do something stupid than to get one or two people. And if you have ever been on a haunted hayride, you know that's true. Because a haunted hayride is stupid. It's fun, but nobody woke up that morning and said, you know what I want to do? I'm going to drive out to the middle of Pennsylvania. I'm going to spend $50 all by myself. I'm going to wait on the line for 2 hours so that I can be on a hayride so that some dude in a mask can come out with his chainsaw and go, ah! Nobody has done that. So how do you end up on a haunted hayride? Someone says you're at, like many stupid things, you start at Friendly's. And someone says, hey, you know what I saw today? You know what would be fun to do? Let's go on a haunted hayride. And what does the next person say? If the next person says, that's a stupid idea, then that person just goes back to eating their fries and the thing drops. But the next person says, that's a great idea. Let's go. And then the third person, who you all have as a friend, this third person, Chucky, we're going to call him, the guy who you all have as a friend, who never orders anything, but always somehow eats everybody else's fries. He just always does. And he's going to say, oh, but I don't have any money. And somebody says, I got you. You'll pay me back next week. He'll never pay you back. But it's the idea. Chucky has to come too. So I'll pay you back. I got you. Oh, great. And then someone says, hey, I'm going to call my girlfriend. And they're like, great. Can you bring her friends? Your girlfriend has cute friends. Bring her friends. And it's like, hey, would you like to go to Haunted Hayride? Yes. How about your friends? All right, call me back. Let's do Snapchat. Let's do this. And so suddenly what started as one dude, one person with one idea that they weren't so sure. They're like, hey, we could do this, or we could do something else, has now become a caravan of 4 cars, 25 people sitting on laps because, there's not enough room in the cars, and that's how you want it, and going out to the middle of Pennsylvania so that you could be in a cornfield in the cold in October to stand online for 2 hours in order to hand over $50, which is what, a day's work, 2 days work for a lot of you, so that you could sit on a hayride, so that some dude in a mask could come out and go, ah, at you. Something you would never do alone. And that's Herodotus. Herodotus says you could get a group of people to do something stupid that you can't get just one person to do. And so the Athenians are all in. And what happens is the Persians got mad. Now, the Athenians sent 20 ships, a couple of 100 men, 200 men, nothing much. The Athenians are not Athens yet. They're still poor. They're still kind of third ranked, fourth ranked probably. Behind the Spartans are 1. Probably it's Corinth 2, Thebes 3, Athens maybe 4, maybe even lower than that. And what happens is the Persians show up with a ginormous army. They show up with the army. Darius shows up. The king shows up. He's like, who's messing around in my empire? He shows up with 250,000 people. And what happens is the Ionians spend most of their time fighting each other. And then when the Persians show up, they all surrender because they're all like, someone else made us do it. And Darius says, who? Who made you revolt? And of course, they all point, not wanting to be punished, they all point to Athens. Said, Athens made us do it. Well, that means Athens is next. Athens has to be conquered. Because they got involved in something they shouldn't have. And so Darius will send an army to invade Athens. Not all of Greece, just Athens. And that's the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. And Athens wins. Not Persia. This is the first time the Persians lose. Why? Why did they lose? Well, because remember, the Persian army is huge. Like, even this is a part of the Persian army, but it was still big. It was still 30,000 men. The Athenian army was only 10,000. So the Athenians are outnumbered 3-1. In any other battle, in any other place, that's a defeat. You always lose when you're outnumbered. If you're outnumbered 2-1 or more, you lose. But what the Persians didn't understand is the mountains. And so they couldn't spread out. They were on a piece of beach a mile wide, and that's where the Athenians were, up on a hill. And they had 2 mountains on either side of them. And there were no other beaches close enough to Athens that you could land 30,000 troops. You had to fight at Marathon. And so what happens is there's a battle. But since the Athenians are in a phalanx, all shoulder to shoulder with their heavy armor and their spears, and there's no room to get around them, they just go plowing right through the Persians. They just kind of just a battering ram, go right through and push them back into the sea. The phalanx was more heavily armed and won. And so what are the effects? First, Athenian morale is huge. Awesome pride. They won. They won. We did something nobody else can do. We are poor Athens, silly Greeks, but we won. Nobody else, not Babylon, not Egypt, not the Hebrews, nobody defeated Persia, and we did. 2, they're going to build a fleet. Now you may go, well, that's silly. Why would they build a fleet? But you build a fleet because They thought Persia would come back. And if Persia is going to invade them again, they're going to have to cross the Aegean Sea. They're going to need boats. So the Athenians say, we're going to build boats to protect us. And what they do is build 300 ships. Now, those 300 ships, as we've talked about, needed 200 men per ship. That's 60,000 men. Those 60,000 men get off the boat in September with money in their pocket and abs underneath their t-shirt and say, I want a say. I want to have a say in this government. I want to have a say on taxes. I want to have a say on who we fight. And that gets you your democracy. So that the poor and the rich are tied into the government together, mostly by their fear of Persia, that Persia will come back. The navy also equals trade. So suddenly Athens gets rich. Because those boats, while those boats are military boats, those boats can now protect from pirates and from other navies the trade ships. And so suddenly Athens becomes the hub, the New York, the London, what's called an entrepot, entrepot, the entrepot of the Greek world. If you want to buy something, you go to Athens. If you want to sell something, you go to Athens. It's going to be there. And so what about Persia? So Greece is doing well and Athens is doing awesome. What about Persia? Well, they suffer legitimacy problems. Wait. The Egyptians go, wait a minute, we're Egypt and Athens is a little dinky thing. If the Athenians could win, why not us? Let's get our Egyptian army together. And so immediately there's a revolt in Egypt. Darius has to go down and fight it. He dies of natural causes at some point. His son Xerxes, Xerxes, has to put down that revolt in Egypt. Other people in Babylon and far out in the east start going the same thing. Hey, we heard Athens, this dinky little city won. Well, maybe you're not so tough. So what Xerxes has to do is gain revenge. What Xerxes has to do is prove to everybody that what happened was a fluke and that not only can he conquer Athens, but he's going to conquer all of Greece.